Notice when it says Vayomer Hashem el Moshe Bo el Paro, it's appeared several other times. How many times has it appeared? It appeared every time that God is warning Paro and Mitzrayim. Every time there's a warning. Hashem says to Moshe, Bo el Paro, come to Paro. And we've been learning the style or the pace of Makot, of the 10 plagues, where plagues Aleph and Bet, there's a warning, Gimel not. Dalet and Hey, there's a warning, Vav not. And we learned at the end of last week's Parsha, Ayin, Arov. We learned Datzach, Adash, after Adash, after Shchin, we learned Bet, number 7, at the end of last week's Parsha, the Makkah of Barad. And there we saw a tremendous admission made by King Paro, where he basically comes and does vidoy, and he says, Chatati. And then to the extent he says, Ani, he says, Hashem HaTzadik. God is the righteous one. Vani ve'ami harishayim. And he, of course, and his nation, or parts of his nation, went through a lot of havoc, a lot of injury, a lot of loss. And we go along, yet there was no green light was there. Whether we explain according to what's not written explicitly, that God is taking his freedom of choice away, or whether we see that maybe it's still in his choice, but he is a refusnik, he's adamant, he doesn't allow the Jewish people to go out. So here we are, 7 makot down. How many to go?
3.
Paro doesn't know exactly that there are 3 to go. Maybe Moshe also doesn't know that there are 3 to go. But I know that you know, because you already read what's going on in the Torah. Yet the wall of refuse, of negativity of Paro continues to stand. We thought, as I read the great article of my learning of my father, Rabbi Horowitz, we thought the signs of a crack in the wall of allowing the Jewish people to go out were Biat Paro after his great admission. Yet, he still remains stubborn and adamant. Yet, we see that his servants, the servants of Paro, as we're about to learn, are even more adamant and willing and ready to give a green light for the Jewish people to leave. So, the question is, Aleph, why? From where does Paro draw powers, interest to remain, to give a red light and no green light for the Jewish people to go out? And secondly, what is really causing the weakness that we're about to see? That in Makat Arbeh, we see a very special warning. And maybe if we answer these 2 questions, we'll be able to better to understand what's going on. Remember, we're now in the spotlight and in the background that in the last Makkah with Barad, Paro says, we'll repeat it, Chatati hapam, this time I sinned, Hashem HaTzadik, Ani ve'ami harishayim. Now, you would have thought that after such a great admission like that, there's no need for any what? Any more makot. Okay? You would think that the shlichut of Moshe Rabbeinu has come to a conclusion. But in fact, what did we see at the end of the last parsha? If you just turn your page and you see, Pasuk Lamed Daled, verse 34, Vayar Paro ki chadal matar ve'abarad va'kolot va'yosef lachto va'yachped libo hu ve'avadav. In other words, in spite of the terrible things that have happened to Paro and parts of the Egyptian people, Paro wantingly, criminally basically, hardens his heart, does not admit, and he doesn't allow the Jewish people to be freed. Now, if Paro did not accept the claim that there's the existence of God, okay, he does not admit it, then how do we understand? Do we understand if he doesn't admit to it? Now, I understood until now, he didn't admit to God's existence, then he doesn't free the Jewish people. But according to this last admission, Hashem is the tzaddik and we're the wicked people. After such great, what is that called? Vidoy, confession that he's making, what's causing him? And what's causing his administration, his advisors, to harden their hearts? 2 points I want to bring to you that we can find in the Midrash, my father-in-law taught me, is the following. Look, we all know that Egypt is a country of idolatry. And a lot of what Paro is seeing, he could associate that it's the power of idolatry. Even Paro considered himself, he idolized himself and made himself a god. So it could be that what? Okay, maybe there's a God. And you know what? It could be that there could be even intervention, supervision of God in this world. But it doesn't mean that he can overcome me. I could still be stronger. In other words, Paro is so arrogant, is so full of pride, that he still might think at this moment, there's room for me to overcome them. That's one point that could contribute to the hardening of his heart. Yes? Yes.
Hashem clearly says to Moshe he's going to make Pharaoh's heart strong.
The question is when. It doesn't state literally. It doesn't state literally. We saw the Rambam and the Midrash that is from 6 to 10. However, let's still go according to the Pshat that we don't know that is the case. And we would like to know on the surface what is contributing to the hardening of his heart. So one point could be that he still thinks that his idols, his gods, can be stronger than the God of Israel. Now, he could admit to the God. He could admit that he's very powerful, but yet the powers of his gods are stronger. Number 2, did I mention last week what the Midrash says? What is the duration? What is the period of time of each and every Makkah until now?
1 month.
We explained that there's 3 weeks of warning and 1 week of the actual Makkah. That means until now, whoa, Mazal Tov, Mazal Tov. Shalom, Baruch haba. No, you get the Chatan seat, come sits over here. You see what happens when you get married? Huh? What? Okay, Shalom Aleichem. It could be that 1 month for each Makkah, 3 weeks for a Hatra'ah. Give the gentleman, the Rabbi, the Chatan a Chumash. Not yet. Give him a Chumash, please. That's his own. Yet, now, what happens when I tell you weeks ago that if you don't let them out, this is going to happen? Once it's a long duration, once there's a hafsakah of 3 weeks between this Makkah, 3 weeks of warning, and then the next Makkah. That means there's basically a interruption, a recess of 3 weeks between each and every Makkah. What happens to the influence of the Makkah on the nation, on the leader? If it was 3 weeks ago, what?
It starts to wane.
It starts to wane away. It's weak. It becomes more and more weak. The influence, it degrades, goes down and decreases and decreases and decreases. Maybe people start suffering what a lot of world leaders suffer. It's called wishful thinking. Maybe the Makkah that happened 3 weeks ago was a natural disaster. Okay, that's what the science calls often these tornadoes and hurricanes and earthquakes. What?
Acts of nature.
The acts of nature. Natural disasters. So let's prove these points, these 2 points, that maybe contribute to Paro's thinking that I don't have to let them out. Let's now read here inside the Parsha and see if we can notice these 2 claims. Perek Yud, Pasuk Aleph, we're reading. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe bo el Paro. Ki ani chbadeti et libo vet lev avadav leman, so that shiti ototai ele bikirbo. As we've seen before, bo el Paro is the initial statement. Go and warn Paro. We've seen it several times in Makot number 1 and 2. In Makot numbers 1 and 2, 4 and 5, then 7 and 8. Exactly. And now we're up to number 8. Now, the purpose of the Makot, as we see clearly here, is not only like we've been thinking now to punish Paro. God is taking vengeance on him. It's proper for someone that did so much trouble to the Jewish people, and now God is taking care of Paro. You know, don't think that the word vengeance doesn't appear in our Torah dictionary. And I thought I read a very interesting article not long ago by Rabbi Soloveitchik. Did I see that? Yeah. I have an article in front of me, thank you, by Rabbi Soloveitchik. He says the following in a sefer called Kod Dodi Dofek. Okay, and the former Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva University. Who is the Rosh Yeshiva now? Does anyone know? Rabbi Schechter is his name. I met him last week in Beitel. He came to give a shiur. I went to shake his hand and say Shalom Aleichem. He's a big gadol. He says the following, and this is already many years ago. Pay no attention to the saccharine suggestion of a non-assimilationist and of some Jewish socialist who stand pat in their rebelliousness and think they're still living in Bialystok or Brest-Litovsk or Minsk in the year 1905 and openly declare that revenge is forbidden. Jewish revenge is forbidden. Okay? To the Jewish people, it's a sword. You're not allowed to take revenge at any time, any place, under all circumstances. Rav Soloveitchik says, vanity of vanity, hevel havalim, to say such words. Revenge is forbidden when it's pointless. But if we need self-defense, okay, the Torah is always taught that a man is permitted indeed, and he has a sacred obligation to defend himself, right? What does the Gemara say? Habala horgecha, someone that's coming to kill you.
Get up before.
Hashkem leorgo, precede, preempt, and kill him. Certainly on a national scale, okay? But so if it's pointless, we understand. But if it's not pointless, we have to defend ourselves. So Avram Avinu, okay, when he's told that his nephew was taken into captivity, he doesn't say, no, it's forbidden for me to take revenge against these 4 kings. He goes out and fights them. When Moshe Rabbeinu saw the Egyptians smiting a fellow Hebrew, he didn't say, well, socialistic law forbids me to take revenge. He went out and he killed him. And he buried him in the sand, and we understood the Hakarat HaTov, that Moshe Rabbeinu even has to the inanimate. He's not going to take the stick and hit the dust of the earth because it saved his life, that he was able to hide the Egyptian inside the dirt, and so on and so forth. So too here, when Hashem is willing to smite the Egyptians, he's demonstrating that, you know what? There's always going to be accountability for the spilling of Jewish blood. And that has always been the defense idea and philosophy of the state of Israel. Someone's going to lift up a hand against the Jewish people, we're not going to stand there. It's enough. We went to the slaughterhouses, 6 million of our brothers and sisters. That's enough. We have a state now, we have an army now, and we have Jewish pride for the state of Israel. And we're not going to sit idly and do these things, okay? B'ezrat Hashem. So, now let's continue reading another purpose of the 10 Makot. Pasuk Bet, Uleman, I'm going to continue hitting Paro for the following reason. Tisaper be'oznei vincha, uven bincha, to your grandchildren even, et asher hit'alalti b'mitzrayim, it's a hard verb, hit'alalti. I am the ilah, I am the cause. It's coming from me. It's a philosophical term that often the Maharal of Prague uses. Hit'alalti, I am the cause. Vet ototai, and the signs, asher samti vam. Vidatem ki ani Hashem. In a very intricate line of technique of handing down Torah education. We're going to tell our children and our grandchildren, all the generations, that this is not the act of a ghost or a demon or the sorcery or magic of Egyptian matters. It's all coming from Hashem. Pre-told, forewarned 2 out of 3. And you're going to tell your children, that'll be the basis of our understanding and belief in a God that reveals himself and that is all powerful in the world. This is the instruction to Moshe and Aaron. What do they do and what do they say? And let's see if we can support the stubbornness of Paro. Vayavo Moshe ve'Aaron el Paro. Okay? Vayomru elav. Notice they're coming together in the warning. Ko amar Hashem Elokei ha'ivrim. Time and time again, God is distinguished, called the God of the Hebrews. We come from a land of the Hebrews. We speak the Hebrew language. And the question, the rhetorical question to Paro is the following. Ad matai me anta le'anot mi panai shalach ami v'yavduni. This is the first time we're coming in contact with the rhetorical question, ad matai me, well, maybe the second time. Ad matai me anta. Lima'ain is to refuse. Okay? Lima'ain is a proper Hebrew word we even use today, to refuse. Lima'ain. Okay? You ask this woman, would you please marry me? If she says, ani mima'enet, I refuse, then you can't marry a woman unless she accepts to be married. We need it. Okay? Ad matai me anta. And then the word, which is unique, le'anot mi panai. Le'anot mi panai. The word le'anot. What is it coming to teach us? Le'anot. What is the shoresh of the word? Which word? Le'anot. What is ani? Poor. Poverty. What else?
Me.
Oni. It can be impoverished. It could have also been affliction. Okay? But it can be oni, poor, impoverished. But it can also come the same shoresh, anava, which is humility. In other words, when will you stop being so arrogant? When will you succumb? When will you lower yourself, submit yourself? It's enough. So what are we saying the reason? Why has Paro been so adamant in his refusing each time to let the Jewish people out? It's clear that the first fundamental point that we said that can contribute to him continuing to be so strong in saying no, 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 is that he is full of arrogance. He's not willing to succumb and submit himself. And therefore God uses in the warning, this is the words of Moshe and Aaron, le'anot. When are you going to stop? Not succumbing, not submitting yourself. Shalach ami v'yavduni. Send my people out and let them serve me. This is what we see here in Pasuk Daled. The second fundamental point that we wanted to say, we'll hear in a moment. But now they're told what is upcoming. V'chisat ein haaretz, the eye, the visible part of the land, the visibility of the land will be covered. V'lo yuchal lirot et haaretz, you won't even be able to see. Follow the Hebrew reading. V'achal, this upcoming makkah, what will it do? It will devour et yeter hapileta, whatever vegetative products were left from Barad. Did Barad wipe out every vegetative crop, yes or no?
No.
Because there are things that have yet to ripen and grow. So now a few weeks are passing. We're now in the month of Nisan, springtime. I'll prove to you later that the makot of Shchin and makat bechorot are not like the others. It seems logical to say that they will not last for weeks. We're an entire month of a makkah and 3 weeks of warning. Choshech will be number, according to our understanding, each third makkah, there's no warning. So there's not going to be weeks of warning. Plus, makat bechorot also is not going to have weeks or lasting. It's going to be a one-nighter, a 1 hour, a 1 minute, a 1 second it's going to be.
2 seconds, it's around midnight.
What? What's that?
It's around midnight.
It's around midnight. Okay. So let's get to it. So what are they going to do? We're going to learn about what will be an upcoming economic disaster to the Egyptian economy. V'achalet yetera peleta hanisheret lechem min habara. It says it clearly. Whatever was left over from the bara that was not ripened to fall off and hit by the barat from the hail. V'achalet kol ha'etz, whatever grew in trees that didn't grow until before. Hatzomech lechem min hasadeh. What will this arbeh, this locust, be doing? I by mistake I skipped actually the reading of arbeh, that the locust will come to you. Umalu vatecha, pasuk vav verse 6. They're going to fill up your homes. Uvatecho levadecha, your servants, your legislative aides. Uvatecho mitzrayim. They're going to go into everywhere. Asher lo ru avotecha. Never ever can you account for this. Your ancestors. Vavot avotecha. When? Miyom heyotam ala dama. Ever since you've been created, you've never seen a strike like this by these locusts. Ad hayom azeh. That is the end of the hatra'ah, the warning. How do I know? Because the next phrase says, Vayifen vayetze miyem paro. Although, I want you to understand a point. If you technically analyze the psukim and look at the verbs, and you know that both Moshe and Aaron are coming, it should have stated initially vayavo, and it should have stated vayetzu in the plural tense. However, we see the term vayavo and vayetze. And your question is, why? Shouldn't it say double? The answer is very simple. The leader is Moshe. And therefore, everything is after Moshe, everything's connected to Moshe, and it's written in singular, even though they're doubling up and coming as a dual leadership. That's often we see these things, that if we go according to the leader. And now, let's see the reaction of Paro or his staff. Pasuk Zayin, Vayomru hu avdei Faro. To who? Elav. To him. Ad mataya ze lanu lemokesh. Unclear term ze. Who is it referring to? Is it referring to Paro? Is it referring to something else? It's very unusual that it refers to a person. When will this ze? Until when will it be as for us a mokesh? What is a mokesh? A trap. A trap, a stumbling block. Shalach et anashim, send them. The legislative aides are saying, or his advisors, V'yavdu et Hashem Eloheim, let them serve their gods. Maybe you don't even know what's going on. Do you know what's going on in the urban centers, in the rural areas? This is before electronic communications? What? Yes. So he doesn't have an exact report of what's happening in all the other cities, that all the terrible things are happening here. Gentlemen, this verse, this term, zeh, Ad mataya zeh lanu makesh, is a very unclear term. What does zeh refer to? What does the Torah mean in the usage of zeh? It could mean that we're referring to the logic of Paro and his advisors, why things are weaning away and the influence of the makot is less and less, and we're not even convinced because there's so many hafsakot. There's a hafsakah, an interruption of time of 3 weeks between one makkah and the other makkah. Maybe it allows recuperation, physically, mentally. The influence, like you said, is weaning off. It's not like what it was 3 weeks ago. And now we have free room to think, free room to work, make decisions. Should we continue to subject the Jewish people? Should we stop it? In other words, Ad matayeh zeh, this style of smiting us, when will it stop being a mokesh? Come on, don't let this fool you. We should really let them go out of here. Let them go out of there. In other words, it could be that a second explanation that attributes the adamness, the stubbornness of Paro Melech Mitzrayim is that the style of the makot with a respite of 3 weeks in between is causing less of an influence. Don't let this be a less of an influence, his aides say. Send them already. Now, what are we foreseeing here in Makkah number 8? What's going to happen here in Makkah number 8, that they understand the aides, is the following. People that live in northern Africa and other parts of Africa are well aware of what will happen in Ethiopia, Sudan, and other countries as far as an arbeh is concerned. Of all the dangerous insects that we have in the world that could be a threat to the economy of any country, the Arbeh, the locust, they are the greatest. You can ask scientists, agronomists, farmers, what damage they can do. Okay? The origin, if you look up the encyclopedia, the Hebrew encyclopedia under the value Arbeh, you'll find that it states there, Arbeh comes from the word, one second, hey! Who's here sitting here? I'm going to ask my dear friend Eitan. Look at us and not in your Chumash. Spell the word Arbeh. Let's see if he makes the mistake.
Ayin.
No.
Aleph Ayin.
No. Arbeh.
Not Aleph Ayin Reish.
Aleph Reish.
Aleph Reish Ayin Bet Hey.
Help him out, David Adler.
Is it with a hey, I think?
Spell it.
Hey?
No.
Okay, Aleph, R, Resh.
Ah.
Hey.
Aleph Reish Bet Hey.
It could be also with a hey, no?
Mr. Greenwald. Arbeh. What does it sound like?
It sounds like Arbeh.
Oh, that's what our experienced scholars say, that the Arbeh comes from the root of the word like Harbe, which means a lot. The origin of the Arbeh, which is in our land, but further south, going down to Egypt, Canaan, Sudan, and Chabash, the area of Ethiopia, lands which are more south than Egypt, that when they start to, what is it called, when they get together and they start flying together like birds? Migrate is the word? Okay? When they begin to migrate, loads and loads come together, and they could fill up tens or even hundreds of kilometers full of them. They swarm together and they come like it's this gigantic orchestra, and they fall where they fall. So now I wanted to ask one of the scientists, do they have traffic problems upstairs in the air? There's no traffic problems. Do they have weather problems upstairs? Sometimes the weather, but are any people bothering them? I mean, no one's up in the air to bother them. They don't have any walls to climb, no structures to penetrate. So nothing really basically can stop the flock of Arbeh when they're migrating, coming from south to north, and their movement is a great movement. When they decide to land in any specific area, they basically clean the entire area. Whatever is the color green, whatever is growing in a crop is eaten. Gesundheit, right? They go ahead and they eat and they eat and they just take away everything there. Not only something which is vegetative in the field serves as prey for the Arbeh, but also the layers of trees. They eat away on the layers of trees. So therefore, the strike or the plague of the Arbeh and the damage that they're causing was known to the people in Mitzrayim. They suffered in the past whenever they were hit with an Arbeh. But this time, what are they told? They're standing next to Paro. They hear what's about to happen, your ancestors never saw. And your ancestors of your ancestors never saw. From the time they're on the land until here. So we can now estimate that the threat in the mouth of Moshe and Aaron is the greatest threat that can really knock down the Egyptian economy, the public or national economy, plus the private economy, the economy of all the farmers. Okay? So here we see something new is about to happen, that the advisors of Paro understand the difficulty. Okay? We're now up to Pasuk Chet. I'm reading. Vayushav et Moshe v'et Aaron el Paro. A verb in the passive tense. And they were returned. Paro screamed, okay, bring them back. Vayushav. They were brought back. Meaning by shlichim, as Rashi says. Vayushav et Moshe v'et Aaron el Paro. Vayomer lehem. He gives them a green light. Look at the words. Lechu ivdu et Hashem Elokechem. Remember, all the time we were just told, Moshe is only asking for a 3-day permit to go out to the Midbar. Never did Moshe say we are or are not coming back to Mitzrayim. We're going out to serve our God. Paro asks, you with me? Mi vami, last word? Ha'olchim. Okay, who needs to go out to be serving God? Response of Moshe Rabbeinu, Veyomer Moshe. Moshe takes out his list. Okay, we need bin arenu, our teenagers, uviskenenu, and our elder statesmen. Neilech, they have to go out. And then he says, bivanenu, uvivnotenu, bitzonenu, uvivkarenu neilech, ki chag Hashem lanu. If you already talked about ne'arenu, our young teenagers, who are banenu and bivnotenu? Under the age of teenager, maybe under the age of serving God, under 13 perhaps. So to the banot, by the way, the banot, they're not obligated to be the serving of God. It's maybe a mitzvah upon the men and not the women. So he's asking for the youngsters as well. What about tzonenu uvivkarenu? We can't ask the Egyptians to supply our korbanot. Why? The tzon of the Egyptians are their gods. You just can't go ahead and slaughter them. Remember, Israel is, we'll discuss this when we get to the Makat Bechorot, we spiritually are so assimilated that we're just like one level before spiritual devastation. That's not told to us in the Torah. That's hidden to us. We'll talk about what's written in Yechezkel in our next shiur, God willing. So here it is. They want to take out the children. Moshe Rabbeinu gives us a reason why they too have to go out. Do you identify the reason?
It's the festival.
Hebrew? Ki chag Hashem lanu. Ki chag Hashem lanu. So what? So what? Why is that a reason?
Because everyone is obligated, not just men.
Chag, a celebration. What does a celebration include?
Food, drink.
What?
Food, drink.
What else?
Sacrifice.
What else?
Music.
What else?
Children.
Why?
Because the continuation of this generation and to keep it alive, the whole...
Beautiful. The Netziv of Elazon, okay? If I'm not mistaken, it's him that says it, Ki chag Hashem lanu. Are you looking at the clock that I'm looking at? What are the hands of the clock in Hebrew? Called?
It's gone.
What's there?
Oh, it's back, bone. Finger? I'm not sure. Yep.
Machozik.
It's a gimel.
Machogim.
Mechogim. Mechogim. Which includes the word? Chag. Why?
Because
Cycle. That's one meaning. Very good.
It has set time.
Timing. It could be a set time. Very interesting. I didn't think of that idea. What else?
because it's the times of Hashem, the Chag, because it determines the timing and events.
So you're saying the same thing that they're saying. Mechogim. Have you noticed the way Jewish people dance? Unlike the culture of of Gentiles. How do we dance?
In a circle.
Very good. Everyone is equidistant. Everyone sees everyone else. When you see everyone else, that's a full simcha. It's not a private dance of a disco and moving it this way, that way. It's the public dancing together. It's the mishpacha dancing together. It's the people dancing together. That the Netziv of Elazon says. Things that go in a circle, like you said, are called, the hands of a clock are called mechogim, with the word chag. If your helicopter can't land, although they use the term he's encircling in the air, what do we say in Hebrew? Hu chag ba'avir. Hu chag ba'avir. He's going around and around because he doesn't have a green light to land in the from the tower. Okay? Moshe Rabbeinu says, Ki chag Hashem lanu. How can we celebrate and make a chag without, like you said beautifully, the children? Everyone has to be there, even though they themselves are not b'nei avodah. They're not obligated to do the avodah, the sacrifices of the korbanot, of the, okay? So you all said beautiful answers, but the final answer here is we need the entire family, okay? Even though they're not b'nei avodah, how can you be happy without the children? What is the refutation of Paro? Pasuk Yud, let's read together. Vayomer aleihem. Yehi chen Hashem imachem. Okay, that's what you want. May it be that God will be with you. Kasher shalach etchem v'tavchem. When I send you and your kids out, re'u, but I'm warning you. Ki ra'ah neged pnechem. Ki ra'ah neged pnechem. It's a hard phrase to understand. There are those that explain that you are plotting. He's accusing Moshe of plotting some evil. Okay? You're plotting some evil, maybe to escape from Mitzrayim. Not like really that you're requesting. One meaning. Another meaning, okay, I learned from Rav Hanan Porat, one of the great Tanakh teachers in blessed righteous memory. He says, according to science and archaeology, the historians say that the leading idol of the Egyptians was called Ra, Resh Ayin. This, right, the god of the sun. Okay, you've studied that, you've seen that before? Okay, the god of the sun is who they worshipped most of all the Egyptian gods. And for that they established sanctuaries, places of worshipping the god of the sun. Comes Paro and says, okay, I'll let you out, but you just should know. You know he's going to go after you. You know he's going to revenge you. The God called Ra'ah. Okay, Ra'ah. He's going to go up against you. And now, Yud Aleph, the end of this dialogue, Lochen. He goes back on his words. Lechuna hagivarim. Ve'ivdu et Hashem. And not to answer the question. And not who? Lechuna hagivarim. And not who?
The grown-up man.
Not your sheep, not your, what else? Who else not? Ne'arim, Zkenim, Zkeno, just Banim, the little children, no, just the men. Ki ota atem mivakshim. You wanted to take the children, the taf. Okay, look at me. What's the Tanakhic word for children? I just said it. Taf. Taf. Tet. Pesofit. Your children, tapchem. Taf. So we see often in the Chumash and the Tanakh, the word for children is tapchem. We saw that in Pasuk Yud. So here he's giving a green light just for the men to exclude the children. Kiotata mivakshim. That's really what you want to do. You want to do what? Sacrifice to your God. Children don't have to sacrifice to the God. Vayikaresh otam me'et penei paro. Here it is. He chases them out. He's angered at them. He can't stand them anymore. And therefore they're chased out. And now we have a respite. They leave the palace. God prophesies to Moshe. We have a klal, the oral Torah tells us. Every time God prophesies to Moshe Rabbeinu, it was not inside the palace because the palace is full of idolatry of Avodah Zarah. Apparently, he's now distant from it. Pasuk Yud Bet, verse 12, are going on. Vayomer Hashem Moshe, Netei yadecha al eretz Mitzrayim. We see who is doing the Makkah of Arbeh. It's not Aaron. It's not both of them. Rather, it is who? Moshe. Whatever is related to things that are related to the sky, the highest atmosphere, Moshe Rabbeinu will be doing it itself. There are some classifications that we'll see. You'll remember, Moshe will do the barad that comes from the sky. Moshe does Arbeh. And we'll see Moshe will do choshech. What's ever related to the highest levels of our human existence, it'll be performed by Moshe specifically. As the Maharal of Prague explains, because he's on the highest level. Whereas the last Makat Bechorot, did anyone finish this? Finish this one? Who will do Makat Bechorot? Only Hashem. Not with the involvement neither of Moshe nor of Aaron. Let's go on. Okay, now is the time for the execution. Vayomer Hashem Moshe netei yadecha al eretz Mitzrayim. Okay, stretch out your hand. And as we've been saying until now, Eitan.
Mate.
Beli mate? We've been saying the opposite.
No.
That the Torah doesn't have to tell us exact every detail, but netei et yadcha, what's in his yad? The mate. The mate is inside his hand. Netei yadcha al eretz Mitzrayim ba'arba v'ya'al, and it will come up al eretz Mitzrayim. Interesting, v'ya'al. I'm thinking that if it's coming from Sudan or from the Ethiopian area, it's coming from the south to the north. Yeah. So everyone, you go up north, right? We always use the term going up north, and probably in European countries as well, right? North is always going up, is it not? It's a world map, right? As far as going down south, am I right or not?
But Egypt is different, right?
Yeah. You have the mountains in the south, and then you have the
because they follow the Nile.
plain.
So upper Egypt, the south.
Okay.
Lower Egypt is the delta.
Okay, but if it's coming from Sudan and from Ethiopia, perhaps it's going from the south to the north, is it not?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I wanted to know.
Elevation, it goes down.
It's going down.
Yeah.
I see, from that point. Okay, so maybe that's the reason why V'ya'al, it'll come up al Eretz Mitzrayim. What will it do? God prophesies to Moshe, V'yochal it kol esev haaretz. Every herb, it'll devour. Et kol asher ishir, whatever the barad left over. Pasuk Yud Gimel, Moshe without haste, Vayet Moshe et mateu. You see, Eitan, now it even expresses that he does stretch out his mateh. Al Eretz Mitzrayim, Vashem niag ruach kadim ba'aretz. Usually, ruach comes from which direction?
West.
Here, the Mediterranean is west of us. When there's ruach, when there's wind, the wind comes from the west. Okay? Here we're seeing an unusual wind coming from Kadim, east. Yama, Vakenma. Remember, God's promise to Avram Avinu, quote, Ufaratzta. Let's sing the Chabad song. Ufaratzta, Ufaratzta, Ufaratzta. Yama Vakenma, Tzafona Vanegma. Ufaratzta, Yama Vakenma. Ay, Tzafona Vanegma. Ahai. Ufaratzta, Yam. We're going to spread out to the Yam, to the direction of the
West.
which means west in this case. Very good. Kedem, where the sun comes up earliest in the morning. Kedem in the east. Okay, so here we see an unusual wind. I once heard from a student, Tafshin Samich Tet, 14 years ago. It was an Olef from Phoenix, I think, or Arizona, somewhere in Arizona, if I remember. He explained to me why he thinks it's coming from the east. The wind is coming from the east. Anyone have any insight? I never saw this in any of the time. What I want to say is, anyone know or can make a understanding why the ruach is coming from the east per se?
The sun is rising.
And therefore?
It's from Sinai.
Hey, it's from the God where they worship, because it's like a judgment from their own God.
Oh, so it's very nice. So you divided into what Benjamin Laskin said 14 years ago in the Shur, that he thinks, he suggested that God of Israel is now hitting the God of Egypt in the east, where the sun is coming up and overcoming their God. Paro has been suffering from wishful thinking that even though there might be existing a God, and he may be so powerful, but maybe his gods are more powerful than the God of Israel. So here the wind is coming dafka from the Kadim, from the eastern wind, the source of their sun. Thank you. Vashem nihag, Hashem is conducting. Nihag. A driver is called a nahag. Follow the reading in Hebrew, please, in the middle of Yud Gimel, verse 13. Vashem nihag ruach kadim ba'aretz kol hayom hahu v'chol halayla. Wow, it's all day and all night. Haboker haya, meaning the next morning, very good. Veruach hakadim, this eastern wind, nasa, carried, et ha'arbe, carried harbe. What's the damage? Pasuk Yudalit. Vayal harbe al kol eretz Mitzrayim vayanach. It's landing. It's resting. Where? Everywhere. Bechol kevul Mitzrayim. Kaved meod. In this narrative, God is describing the extent of this makkah. Not just is it kaved, me'od, with a superlative. Me'od. Lefanav, earlier in time, lo haya chen arbe kamo, never was there something like this. V'acharav, a prophecy in the future, lo yeh ken. What did it do? Like the warning said, Pasuk Tedvav, Vayichaset ein kol haaretz. All of the land of Egypt is covered up with locust. And as a result, the locusts are not transparent or white or green, but they're what color? Dark color. Vatechshach haaretz, as if there's no more sunlight. It's all dark. Vayochal, and the locust eat it. Kol esev haaretz et kol pri ha'etz asher otira barad. What's left over? Velo notar kol yerek. As far whatever had the appearance of green or vegetative, nothing is left over but eitz, whether it's in the tree. Uve'esef hasadeh, all the other crops. Bechol eretz Mitzrayim. Wow, devastation. Vayimaher. Now, I want to just make this point that I noticed by my father-in-law, Rabbi Horowitz. In all of the warnings that we've studied until now, that were given issued to Paro after the first three, Tatzach, we notice that the time that it will come will be the day after the warning. So too here. The warning is given now, and it actually happens the day after. Why would that be? That the actuality of the Makkah is the day after the warning. What could it be for? Yes, Shua?
In Ba'ad, we saw that the Egyptians could bring in their animals from the field.
Ah.
The warning.
Can we give them time to do tshuva? Okay. But about the locust here? There's no, what are you going to take the plants and you're going to harvest the country? What could be?
Kids aren't outside, I don't know.
The locusts are not devastating the human beings. They're devastating every vegetative plant and tree. What could be the idea that it's today, if happening for tomorrow?
You could
To
harvest
give the
whatever's there.
opportunity to heed the warning and to listen and to change your mind. I don't
Okay, right.
If they
Right.
have-
To allow Paro and his staff to do tshuva, let them entertain this idea, host it, discuss pros and cons, and make a decision. Okay? Everyone right now is Avdei Paro. They can come and say, look, we've had enough. And therefore, it could be, we can come to this conclusion that right now, the refusal of Paro is together with his advisor. He has many advisors. And right now, it could be, like we're going to see, that the advisors are going to come and say, it's enough. We got to do more. We got to let them out already. Yes?
Question. They want only Paro, all the people of Mitzrayim, because if there's a plague like this, you have to warn everyone, because they don't know.
So it's enough for the advisors that are making the decisions right now. The laymen, the regular Mustafa and others have no play in the decision-making process. But it's Paro and his yo'atzim, his avadim, his servants, his advisors, his aides. So maybe they're given a chance. Let's see the results of this. Pasuk Tet Zayin. Vayimaher Paro likro leMoshe uLeAaron. He's in a big hurry now. Vayomer, and now notice this new admission. Chatati laShem Elokeichem velachem. In other words, I didn't act properly, not to God and not to you. What is Paro referring to in his lack of honor or dignity to Moshe? What is it referring to?
When he didn't let him out.
No, not only that. It was more than that. What did we just learn and see?
When he didn't want let the children go?
No.
He drove him out.
He drove him out. He chased Paro out of his office. He chased Moshe out of his office. Vayigarish, it's a very hard verb. He drove him out of there. Get out of here. I don't want to see you. Get out of here. So right now he's admitting, he's doing a vidui in his lack of dignity both to God, and he's also referring to that he acted wrongly to Moshe. Pasuk Yud Zayin. And now he's asking slicha. Ve'ata, and now sa na chatati ach hapam. We'll see this in the Tanakh often. The verb is used in several ways. Laseit. A truck is called masait because it's carrying. But God, in the 13 principles of mercy at Sinai after the Chet HaEgel, nosei avon vafesha. God is carrying, bearing, accepting, and forgiving. So the word sa, okay, in the imperative, sa, bear, tolerate, accept. Sana chatati, please accept our what? My sin. He's asking for slicha. Achapam, just this time. Va'atiru, pray hardly, Lashem Elokechem. V'yaser me'alai rak et hamavet hazeh. Huh? Mavet. Is this referring to what we said in our last year on Yom Revi'i, that according to some commentaries, with every makkah that happened, some dignitaries, some VIPs of Paro's administration were being killed? Is that what he means here? Could be. Or could mavet refer to something else? What is it?
Starvation because of the failure of crops.
Meaning economic destruction. Economic destruction equals mavet, death. Okay? As Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch explains in his commentary, he says, all future crops are doomed now. Do you know why? Do you know what locusts contain in their body? Do you know what they deposit when they eat their products? There's something called a larva, L-A-R-V-A-E. How do you pronounce it properly? I'm mistaken. What?
A larva.
A larva?
Or larva.
Do you know what it is? I think it's like depositing poison to these plants areas as well. That's going to doom them further on. And they're causing even further destruction, not just consuming the plant itself. Whatever you're going to plant in another week or so, these eggs, they're eggs basically? Is that what you're saying? They're eggs?
Developed, yeah.
So they may develop into kleiner locusts, little ones, that have a small appetite, but it'll be enough to take away the seeds, whatever. So right now, Paro is saying, wow, this mavet, economic destruction you've done to us. What does Moshe say? No. Look at the derech eretz of Moshe. Pasuk Yudchet verse 18, Vayetze mi'im Paro. He leaves, he departs. Vaye'etar el Hashem. Remember, we've seen this word time and time again. Do you remember in Bereshit where we saw this verb of prayer being used? Who had to pray very hard? It was Yitzchak and Rivka. Rivka was barren. Hayta akara. Vaye'ater lo Hashem. He was praying very hard. The same root, ayin taf reish. La'atir is to pray very hard. So that's what Moshe is doing. Interesting. You thought, you deserve it. I'm not going to pray. You go to, where, HE double toothpicks or something like that. But he doesn't say that to him. He keeps on respecting him as king, and he prays to God. What does Hashem do? Pasuk Yutet. Vayahafoch Hashem ruach yam. Wow. The wind tunnel changes from Mizrach to the Yam. Yam is west. Chazak me'od. Vayisa ta'arbe. Wow, it's carrying these, who knows, millions of arbe. Vayitka'eu. It just pushes them. Yamasuf. Yamasuf into the Red Sea. Yes? Lo nishar ber echad. We get a report in our Arbe report. Not one remains. Bechol gvul Mitzrayim. Yet, vayichazek Hashem et leiv Paro ken velo shilach et bnei Yisrael. We see here that Paro's point over here, after Paro probably speaks with advisors and so on and so forth, he's now ready to succumb to the request of Moshe Aaron and send them away maybe for 3 days. Okay? However, we see that Paro is adamant, and right now he still believes, apparently, that maybe his God is greater or stronger than the God of Israel, or the secondary explanation we've been using, that God is intervening here in the process changing his mind, because God has a plan that he wants Israel to see the strength of God, to see that God, as the Maharal of Prague explains, there are 10 levels of existence in our world. From under the water, where Dam was, Tzfardim at the shore, Kinim, the earth, the lowest levels, Dever in the air, okay, Datzach, Dash, and then Shchin is even higher in the air where there's heat coming. And then we saw after Datzach, Ve'adash, we saw Bet, Barad, coming from the higher atmospheric skies. And then we saw Arbeh, whatever's considered an oaf, flying, is considered Ye'ofef Bashamayim, in the highest skies, as if the root of Arbeh is from where birds can fly higher up. And now, after doing Datzach, Adash, Bet, Aleph, we're already getting up to Choshech. And just so we can learn this better, can you please hit the lights? I'm just joking. Okay. What is Choshech? And why is it so unique? Let's begin reading. Pasuk Kaf Aleph. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe. Nete yadecha l'shamayim. Vihi Choshech al eretz Mitzrayim. V'yamesh Choshech. What doesn't appear here?
The staff and a warning.
A warning. Right away. Execute. No warning. With your staff, Moshe Rabbeinu,
No,
the hand.
without, no?
According to some commentators, there is no staff, but according to others, there is a staff, even though the Tanakh doesn't mention it. Machloket Rishonim, if I'm not mistaken. Let's understand what Choshech is, because here the Torah says a very unusual verb, V'yamesh Choshech.
Physical.
V'yamesh. Give me a good Yiddish word. With these letters. Come on. You know it. You grew up with too many Sfaradim in Los Angeles, I think. What? Mamish. Mamish. It doesn't say mama. Okay, in Hebrew we pronounce it mamash. Reality, real. It is substance. It's like there's thickness, you can almost take a knife and you can cut it. The darkness is so great that it's like a substance.
Tangible.
It's tangible, thank you. It's tangible. V'yamesh choshech. In other words, I want to explain, I think it's the Ramban that explains. Ibn Ezra says regarding choshech, why does it say v'yamesh from the word mamash? Shimashashu biyadam. They can touch it with their hands. Choshech. Shel kol kach ye'av. Ibn Ezra says it will be so thick. Ki ha'or shel esh lo yidalek. The light of fire will not be lit. Velo haner, nor a candle can be lit, because the choshech is so substantial, so thick. Okay? Lo ra'u ishetachiv, we'll see in verse 23. No one can see one another, lo be'or hayom, not through the light of day, nor through the light of candles. It'll be so thick. And this we see, this explanation is compatible with the next pasuk, because pasuk of Bet 22. Vayet Moshe et yado al hashamayim. Vayihi, what turns out? Choshech afela. Afela, we all know, also means darkness. So it's like a double darkness. Choshech afela. Two terms that denote darkness. Where? Bechol Eretz Mitzrayim. For how long? Shloshet Yamim. Wow. And because it's so thick, the result is in Pasuk Kaf Gimel, Lo ra'u ish et achiv, velo kamu ish mitachtav, sheloshet yamim. Ulechol b'nei Yisrael, haya or, where? B'moshvotam. My dear friends, the classic commentary of the Ramban here to explain how do we understand Choshech here. Is Choshech, he asks, the lack of sunlight, the lack of sun hours, then and since we don't have sunlight and no sun hours, then it's just like nighttime. He says no. Because the Torah says it's choshech and afela, meaning it's like a cloud, a dark cloud that's so thick, that's so substantial that God has brought down, right? Netei yadcha l'shamayim, towards the sky. Moshe is directed to stretch his hand with or without the mateh, machloket. So from the sky comes down this cloud covering the country that's so thick, and therefore it brings choshech and afela. If there was a light that was on, it was extinguished. If you had dug tunnels with lights down there, they could not exist. The lights could not exist anywhere. Okay? And therefore, as a result, no Egyptian could see one another, nor could they get up. They were frozen. They could not motion, no mobility whatsoever. And you should know as well that some of the Rishonim say the fact that it states in 22, Shloshet Yamim, and it states in Kaf Gimel 23, Shloshet Yamim, there are those that say that it was for the duration of 6 days.
For 3 days they couldn't see, for 3 days they couldn't get up.
And it says for 3 plus 3 they might say. Gentlemen, all this is in the Moshvatam. Now, this is a prelude for tomorrow's Shi'or. Why did Hashem choose Choshech? Is it only because of the God of the sun, or is there furthermore things to do? How many months have passed since God introduced Moshe to start smiting the Egyptians? How many months have... I have to wake up. 1 second. It's a sign for me to wake up. Let me wake up. Come on, gentlemen. I have to wake up. Menachem, wake up. Okay. Oh, great to learn Torah here with you. What is it? How many months have passed?
Roughly 7.
No, it's less than 9 because there are plagues that didn't have a.
We just finished plague of Arbe definition. We finished how many plagues? 8. 8 months have passed.
And then there's no warning plus 3 days.
Okay, 8 months have passed. What was the situation of Bnei Yisrael? 8 months ago, Moshe Rabbeinu goes to Bnei Yisrael, and they didn't want to accept him. V'lo shamu el Moshe mikotze ruach u'me'avoda kasha. They had no patience, and because of the hard work, they don't accept Moshe Rabbeinu. Has anything changed over the course of 8 months? We were told that Moshe was repeated to tell them to go again and talk to Bnei Yisrael. It says, Vayitzaveim, and command them. We offered an explanation by one of the commentators that they had to go to Bnei Yisrael to tell them what is upcoming that's going to smite the Egyptians. They shouldn't think it's the act of sorcery or magic or God's idolatry. They should know that it's God of Israel taking them out, doing all these things. Has anything changed? Or has nothing changed? We're going to open up Sefer Yechezkel, who we read, by the way, in last week's Haftarah, but a different chapter 20-ish or so. And we're going to see what's hidden in the Torah as far as what is the spiritual level of the Jewish people now. And it's not good, and it's not bad. It's worse. For this and more, in tomorrow's Shiur.